dear learners, welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. Today, I will start with a new topic that is objectivity in social science. What is objectivity and why is it required? Objectivity can be understood as a direction given to the researcher to be unbiased and open to criticism. For a good research, it is required that researchers should be unbiased and value free. Only then we can generalize the results of research. And researchers should be open to criticism. Objectivity means that evidences and facts need to be verified dispassionately. It is required you should verify your results, you should verify your facts or the evidences without biasness. Conclusions need to be drawn on the basis of facts without any value judgment. Researcher, it means in simple words, if I can put it in simple words, that a researcher should be value free. If a researcher is value free, then only we can generalize the results, then only we can conclude the results of that research. Free of individuals' personal beliefs. Research results or conclusion should be uh, value free, or it should be free of individuals' personal belief. What I think, what is my belief, should not impact the results of research or should not impact my research. If my values and my beliefs are impacting my research, then that is not a good result. We cannot generalize those results. That research is biased research. You cannot conclude on the basis of that type of research. Objectivity in social research has its origin in positivism. If you remember, while we were discussing Amal Durkheim, we discussed about the objectivity. The positivists, according to positivist, objectivity is the foremost requirement. If you want, according to positivist, if we want social sciences to be equal or to be equal with other sciences or physical sciences, then objectivity is one of the requirement or the first requirement. If we want to study the social sciences as like of natural sciences, then objectivity is required. This positivism propounds that researchers should remain distant from what they study. Finding depends on the nature of what was studied rather than on the personality, beliefs, and values of the researcher. Right? Finding should depend on what was studied, what a researcher observed. It to define the sociology. According to him, sociology is distinctly different from other subjects. Because of his efforts, we can we are able or we can study sociology as a subject. Durkheim outlined the methodological aspects of sociology, and in doing so, also brought out clarified the issues of objectivity. He defined the methodologies to study society scientifically. How can we study society scientifically? He defined that methodology. And while he was doing so, he clarified the issue of objectivity. According to him, if we want to study society scientifically, then we should study it objectively. Social facts. Durkheim, while trying to develop a subject matter of sociology and its method, propounded that all preconception must be eradicated. A researcher should be unbiased. All preconceptions, all values, all beliefs must be eradicated. In the rules of sociological methods, this is the book written by the Durkheim. In this, he defined the methodologies to study society scientifically, the rules of sociological method. In this book, he emphasized that there are certain facts in social life which cannot be explained by physical or psychological analysis, and these were the social facts. According to him, we cannot study all the facts. There are certain facts which cannot be explained by the physical or psychological analysis, and these facts are known as social facts. According to Durkheim, social facts have an objective reality that sociologists can study in a way similar to how other scientists, such as a natural physical world or natural scientists, study the physical world. So, according to Durkheim, we can study science of society as per the rules of natural sciences. That is, we can study society scientifically or objectively. Social facts are objective and are capable of being perceived from outside. Social facts are understood only by sociological laws. There can be no psychological explanation of these facts. Sociology cannot be explained by the principle of utility or individual's motivation. If you remember, we discussed about the utilitarian theory. Durkheim discarded that theory. According to Durkheim, sociology cannot be explained by the principle of utility or individual's will or motivation. Its explanation can only be social. You can define the social fact or you can explain the social fact only through society, or the explanation could be social. A social fact is every way of acting, fixed or not, capable of exercising on individual and external constraint. Social facts exercises constraint on individual, and as we know, as per Durkheim, society is more important than the individual or individual will. It is very important to exercise constraint on the individual to maintain the solidarity and the society. Every way of acting, which is general throughout a given society, while at the same time existing in its own right independent of its individual manifestation. Durkheim, as per Durkheim, a social fact is characterized by it being external to individual. Social facts are external to individual. It is related with society, not with individual. Constraining about the individual and is independent of the individual and should be treated as a thing as per the first rule. What is social fact? First rule is social fact is nothing but a thing. Social facts constrains the individual and is independent of the individual. So, what is social fact? Social fact is a thing. According to the Kim, social fact is a thing. Social facts exercises constraint on the individual and it is required for the solidarity of the society. And the third is it is independent of individual. These characteristics is important as understanding and establishing them would help in the objectivity of his methods. It is why it is important to understand the characteristics of social facts because it helps in defining the objectivity. When social fact is considered as a thing, it can be directly observed and objectively measured. Now you understood why it is why these characteristics are important to understand. First characteristic of social factors. It is a thing. When it is a thing, you can observe it directly and you can measure it objectively. I hope this clears the funda of objectivity. So he has given that through social fact, as per Durkheim's, through social facts, you can study the society scientifically. Why and how? Because social fact is nothing but a thing, and being a thing, you can directly observe it and measure it concretely or objectively. In order to study a social phenomenon objectively, a scientist must define the things he treats in order that his subject matter may be known. The definition of the phenomena to be objective must take into consideration the natural characteristics of phenomenon and not the ideas of it. The study of suicide. Durkheim was of the opinion that his study of suicide supported his methodological views. He has given methodologies to study the society and he studied this suicide. According to Durkheim, his study on suicide supported his methodological views. And he argued that his study of suicide demonstrated that real laws are discoverable. You can discover the laws. And social phenomena obey laws in the same way as natural phenomena. You can discover the laws, the real laws, they are discoverable. And social phenomenon, according to Durkheim, social phenomenon follows the law as as the way the natural phenomenon follows the law. Durkheim identified altruistic, egoistic, and anomic type of suicide. We discussed about these types of suicide while we were discussing about Durkheim and his work on suicide. These types of suicide were categorized on the basis of level of integration an individual had with the society. We discussed it in detail that these types of suicide, that is the altruistic, egoistic, and anomic suicide, are the types of the suicide, and these types depends on the level of integration of an individual with the society. How much integrated the individual was with the society. Durkheim used detailed statistical records of suicide from number of European societies. To study the suicide, what he did, he used the statistical data from various European societies. He studied the number of suicides, the reason of suicides in various European societies. The results of his study showed that the rate of suicide was fairly constant over a period of years. When he analyzed those statistical records, he concluded that rate of suicide was constant for a period of years. There was hardly any change. That there were significant difference in the suicide rate between the societies and between social group within the society, within each society. See, understand this thing. The result of his study showed that the rate of suicide was fairly constant over a period of time. Over a period of time, suicide rate was constant, more or less constant. But there was a significant difference in the suicide rate between the societies. There was a significant difference in suicide rates between the societies and between social group within each society. Where there were the less suicide in previous years, it might have increased, or vice versa could be true also. The overall suicide rate was constant, but there was a significant difference in the suicide rates between the societies and the social groups within each society. From these observations, he argued that suicide rate should be regarded as social facts. Since the rates varied systematically between the society, it may be assumed that they are socially determined. According to him, suicide is a social fact. You can study it objectively. And second is, the rate of the suicide varied systematically between the various societies, and it may be assumed that the rate of suicide or suicide was socially determined. It is not an individual decision, but the suicide was determined socially. Durkheim claimed that each society is predisposed to contribute a definite quota of voluntary deaths, that is suicide. The answer to this differing rates in suicide can be explained by analyzing the society and not the individual. If there is difference in the suicide rates in different societies, then you can analyze the reasons by analyzing the society, not by analyzing the individual. If in some society, if in say in X society, there is suicide rate is high, and if in Y society the suicide rate is low, then you can study the reason for the high suicide rate or the low suicide rate by studying this society, not by analyzing the individual. So according to him, suicide rate depends on the society, not on the individual. Society is important than the individual. The study of suicide proved that the behavior of individual was a product of social fact rather than the individual motives. Behavior of an individual depends on the social facts, depends on the society, not on the individual motives. Although suicide seems to be a personal and private act, its causes lie in the nature of social groups. It is therefore a product of social forces which are external to and act upon the individual. One can say, or it seems that suicide is a personal and a private act. But according to Durkheim, it is not a personal or a private act. It is a social act. According to him, it is the social forces which are external to and act upon the individual which forces the individual to commit suicide. Our society exercises some constraint on us. There are certain rules of the society which everyone has to follow. Society puts pressure on the individual. When individual is not able to take that pressure, then he or she could commit suicide. So Durkheim interpreted it that it is not the individual's will, it is not the personal or a private act, it is the social forces which is responsible for suicide rate in this society. Society exercises constraints, put pressure on the individual or act upon the individual, right? So Durkheim defined the objectivity. He defined the methodologies to study society, and he has given the concept of social facts. And he explained his methodologies through his study on suicide. Now let us discuss Weber on objectivity. What was Weber's thought on objectivity? Methodological debates in Germany can be understood on the basis of two interrelated factors. There was a debate going on in the Germany on methodological. How can we study the society scientifically? The methods, on the methods. And we can understood it on the basis of two interrelated factors. First is there tended to be in Germany a firm division between the natural sciences and the cultural division. There was two distinct groups. There was a firm division between the natural sciences and the cultural discipline. This led to only the natural phenomenon to be seen as open to the theoretical analysis. This has consequences led to these studies in natural sciences and social phenomenon developed in different ways. As there was a separation, as I told you, that there was a distinction, a firm division between the natural sciences and cultural divisions in the Germany, and this division led to only the natural phenomenon to be seen to open the theoretical analysis. You can analyze the natural phenomenon theoretically. And this led the studies in the natural and social phenomenon developed in different ways. As as there was a division in the Germany. So according to this division, according to this, you cannot study the society on as per you studied the natural sciences. You cannot implement the laws of natural sciences on the social sciences. So this led to studies in natural sciences and social phenomenon to develop in a different ways. Second was after the early work of Adam Smith and David Ricardo, a non-Marxist economic theory became stagnant, with the result that economics had great difficulty in trying to explain the working of actual industrial economies, and they existed in the 19th century. How these problems could be dealt? By developing the better theories. The second problem was the stagnancy of the theories. Those theories were not able to explain the society properly. So it's how could you tackle those problems? By developing a better theories, or second is by avoiding science altogether and to concrete on the historical development of particular economic system. By avoiding the science together altogether and by concentrating on the historical development of a particular economic system. So one should, if you want to study the society, one should concentrate on the historical development rather than the sciences, and historical development of what, of particular economic system, how that economy is developed. This led to the development of historical and theoretical economics, which also had a methodological issues dividing them. There were the four issues which these two groups disagreed upon. First, uh, there were the four issues, these that is the natural sciences and the cultural groups disagreed upon, and Weber used these debates as a baseline to develop his methodological orientation. Right? So Weber used these debated as a baseline. He tried to bridge the gap between the two groups, and the origin of his argument to the two school of thoughts can be found in the works of Dilthey and Ricketts. Weber was influenced by Dilthey and Rickert. It was these two people who provided the methodological tools for Weber to build his sociology. As he was influenced with Dilthey and Rickert, so we can say that these two people provided the methodological tools for Weber to build his sociology. On the tools of Dilthey, on the basis of the work of Dilthey and Rickert, Weber developed his sociologies. What were those four issues on which the exponent of historical and theoretical economics disagreed were? Theoretical economics involved the relative importance of deduction and induction. The historical economist blamed that the theoretical economist uses the deductive method was faulty because their theories could not explain the reality. So theoretical economics followed the deduction. These involve the relative importance of deduction and induction. But According to the historical economist, this deductive method is faulty as it could not explain the reality. Second is the division between the two groups had to do with the universality and the relativity of finding. Can you universalize your results? How can you universalize or generalize your results and the relativity of the findings of the research? Third is there was a misunderstanding regarding the level of rationality and irrationality in human behavior. Finally, the two groups had to deal with the issues pertaining to the economics as ethical discipline on one hand and as an economics as a science on other hand. The historical economist saw it as an ethical discipline that could solve the problem faced by the German society. So Weber and Dilthey. As I told you, Weber was influenced by Dilthey. Dilthey argued that nature and human behavior could be studied scientifically, right? That nature and human behavior could be studied scientifically, but they produced different kind of knowledge which was to be recognized. Dilthey argued, firstly, that these two sciences have different subject matters. Subject matter defining, it is very important to define the subject matter, right? So, as per Dilthey, that the natural sciences and sociology have different subject matters. And because of this, researcher in each field obtain a different kind of knowledge. Because of the different subject matter, the researcher of the natural science and social sciences obtain different kind of knowledge. You can study both scientifically, but you will obtain the different results or the different kind of the knowledge. Why? Because of different subject matters. Natural sciences produces knowledge which is external, meaning that physical phenomena are affected by one another and another in a way that can be seen and explained in terms of valid laws. Natural sciences produces a knowledge which is external, meaning that physical phenomena are affected by one another in ways that can be seen and explained in terms of valid laws. That is, the externally the physical phenomena are affecting each other, and you can explain these phenomena in terms of valid law. While in social sciences, the knowledge that is produced is internal, meaning that each person has inner nature that must be comprehended in some way in order to explain the event. Natural sciences studied anything externally, while the social sciences, the knowledge that is produced is internal, because everyone has internal nature and it should be included while one is explaining the event. In natural sciences, it is enough to observe events and relationships. It is enough to observe events and relationship between the events between the objects. But in social sciences, researcher must go beyond mere observation and seek to understand each person's inner nature. In order to explain events and relationship, and these explanation can vary based on the cultural background of the researcher. In natural sciences, what you can do, what we can do, we can, it is enough to observe the event and to and the relationship between the event. If x event is happening, the y event is impacting the x event, or is there any relation between x, y and z event, it is enough to observe the events and to find out the relationship. But according to Dilthey, in social sciences, researcher must go beyond this. It is not enough to observe the events and the relationship between the events. It is important to understand the each person's inner value. As I told you in the earlier slide, that inner value, inner nature, every person has inner nature, and it is important to explain this inner nature. And this explanation between the events and the relationship between the events can vary on the cultural background. It varies from society to society. If you are observing, if you are getting a x type of a result in one society, the result might vary in another society because of the cultural background of the, because of the cultural background of the researcher. For Weber, Delphi was correct in noting that social sciences could obtain different form of knowledge than the natural sciences. Right? The results or the knowledge which we will get, which we will observe, being a social researcher or being a natural researcher, the results will get the different results. Weber agreed. Weber agreed with Dilthey that social science statements are different from and must be kept separate from value judgment of any sort. That it should be value free. The most important part that Weber agreed was the social scientific knowledge is to understand Varsthani, the subjective meaning people attach to their action. As Dilthey told that it is not, it is important for a researcher to study the inner nature of the society, inner nature of an individual. The Weber agreed to him that the social scientific knowledge is to understand the Varsthani, the subjective meaning people attach to their action. We discussed about the Varsthani, the subjective meaning of the people while we were discussing the Weber, right? So he has given the concept of Varsthani as he was influenced by the Dilthey, and Dilthey has given, as per Dilthey, it is important to study the inner nature of the individual while explaining the actions or the events. And this is what the Weber agreed. Weber said that it is important to understand the subjective meaning people attach to their action, and it is known as Varsthani. Weber developed a different way of emphasizing the importance of Varsthani. Weber emphasized that importance of understanding individual behavior, while at the same time he was able to assess the significance of historical event in an objective manner. He has given stress or emphasized on understanding of the individual behavior. It is important. He has given importance to the Varsthani. While on the other hand, he has he was able to assess the significance of historical event in an objective manner. According to him, Vasthane is important. One should understand the subjective meaning of the actions, and one should understand the historical event in an objective manner. So, according to him, historical events plays an important role, and it is important to understand the historical event. Then Weber and Rickert. Rickert was also concerned with disjunction between the world of nature and world of human activities that existed. Rickert was of the opinion that reality could be divided into unlimited number of objects for study. These objects could be could in turn be broken down into unlimited number of parts. See, according to Rickert, reality could be divided into unlimited number of objects. You can divide a reality into unlimited number of objects for this study, right? And further, these objects could be broken down into unlimited number of parts, which meant that reality could never be completely understood, as there would always be some another way of understanding or looking at it. It is very important. As per Dilthey, the reality could be broken into number of objects, and these objects can be further broken down into unlimited number of parts, right? And this means you cannot completely understand the reality. Why? Because there would always be some other way of understanding or looking at it. It depends on the researcher or the objectives of the researcher. So, if you feel like you can understand the total reality of something, according to Dilthey, it is not possible. One cannot understand the total reality because the objects could be broken down, realities could be broken down into unlimited objects could be broken down into unlimited parts, right? And you cannot understand the reality because there would always be some another way of understanding or looking at the reality. The problem that arose was, how could one then know anything about the reality? Then how can we study about the reality? How can we know about the reality? Rickert was of the opinion that human being could formulate concepts of these aspects of reality which they thought were important. As per Rickert, human being could formulate concepts of those aspects of reality which they considered to be important. Rickert concept formulation was an important tool in knowing the reality objectively. So, this concept formulation tool given by the Rickert is an important tool in knowing the reality of objectively. Rickert confronted the problem of how scholars select the topics for study. His emphasis on concept formation as the essence of science trapped him in non-productive philosophical argument, as he has given the as he has given the tool of concept formation. So it was considered to be as a non-productive philosophical argument. It was non-scientific. He asserted the researcher choose the researcher's choice of topic is made in terms of value relevance. This emphasis on value relevance implies a subjective rather than the objective conception of knowledge, because the researcher are forced to rely on their own values. He has given he according to Ricketts, a researcher can choose the topic on the basis of their values. So, this emphasis on the values implies a subjective rather than the objective conception of knowledge, because it depends on the values of the researcher. Weber agreed that reality is unlimited and being could know it in terms of concept used to select out significant part of the word for examination. So as per Weber, reality is unlimited, and in order to know it, the concept should be used to select out significant part of the word. So concept formation, he agreed with the concept formation. On the other hand, Weber thought that it didn't matter why a scholar choose a topic over the other, because the selection of topic is determined by the values. He agreed with Ricard that value selection, that he can choose a topic, a researcher can choose a topic of a research on the basis of their values. Weber argued what was more important was that the research process needs to be objective, and this could be achieved when data are clearly conceptualized and systematically analyzed. Even if researcher chooses a topic on the basis of their values, then you can study that research or study that topic. A research process could be objective. According to Weber, the research process needed to be objective. And how it could be achieved? It could be achieved when data are clearly conceptualized and systematically analyzed. By clear conceptualization and systematical analysis of the data, you can study anything objectively. What was Weber's views on objectivity? Weber's methodology of social sciences begin with consideration of the overriding importance of objective sociology. According to him, objectivity is important, but he override the importance of objectivity. He was of the opinion that no scientific analysis can include ethical values within it and can be regarded as objective. During the time of Weber, many didn't believe that an objective sociology was possible, as values were not separated from the research process. Weber confronted the problem of values by observing that sociological inquiry should be objective or value free. Value free sociology. What is value free sociology? By value free sociology, Weber meant that researchers' personal value and economic interest should not affect the process of social scientific analysis. Value free analysis, that is, researchers should be value free, should be unbiased. Researchers' personal value and economic interest should not affect the process of social scientific analysis. Objective analysis were possible if sociologists use a rational method in which the research process is systematic. How could you objectively analyze or objectively study the society? First is empirical data must be categorized in terms of clearly formulated concepts. Empirical data must be categorized in terms of clearly formulated concepts. Concept should be there. Proper rules of evidence must be employed. And third is only logical inferences must be made. Values and science. Weber said that there was no scientific way of choosing a topic or doing research. You cannot choose a topic scientifically. The choice of topic comes before the research is undertaken. The only basis for the individual to choose a particular topic is value. But once a topic is chosen for the study, Weber advocates that the scientist must follow an objective research process. Understood? That a researcher can choose a topic, a researcher chooses a topic on the basis of values. But after the selection of topic, the scientist or the researcher must follow the objective research process. Weber rejected the search for general laws in favor of historical theories and opined that the universal laws excluded important and unique historical events. Ideal type. Weber has given the concept of ideal type. Weber believed that only the use of ideal type could lead to an interpretative understanding. Ideal typical concepts, according to Weber, helps to develop our skills of assertion in research. Ideal type is not an hypothesis, but it offers guidance to construction of hypotheses. It is not a description of reality. Ideal type is not a description of reality, but it aims to give the clear means to describe the reality. To create it, only those elements are selected from the reality which fit together in most rational and suitable way. To create an ideal type, only those elements should be selected from the reality which fit together in most rational and suitable way. The ideal type is utopia. It is a mental construct which cannot be found to exist in reality. An ideal type is constructed by the abstraction and combination of an indefinite number of elements, which, although founded in reality, are rarely or never discovered in specific form. With the help of ideal type, one can find out to what degree is it similar or different from the reality. Ideal type is a means and not an end. Remember this thing. It is a means, not an end. It is an attempt to analyze historically unique event. Ideal types are not formed out of need for a purely conceptual thought, but are created, modified, and sharpened through the empirical analysis of concrete problem. Understood? Ideal type has been used by him as a device in understanding the historical configurations or specific historical problems and are different in both scope and usage from descriptive concepts which can be transformed into an ideal type. Weber doesn't believe that one element of society is determined by another. He conceives the causal relations, both in history and sociology, as partial and probable relation. Popper on objectivity. What was Popper's thought on objectivity? Popper understood the social and human science to be interchangeable. In Popper's logic, three dominant concepts characterize the social sciences, and those concepts are scientific, objective, and empirical. Popper understood the social sciences as a science, a position that attempts to refute the widespread idea that the social sciences represents a weak form of science. Popper considered the social sciences to be objective. He placed the social sciences in social world which contains definite physical forces. These physical forces gives an objective characters to social sciences. Locating objectivity in an intersubjective way, he highlights the social world of science as necessary to ensure objectivity itself. The exchange that happens in such intersubjective engagement as peer review and criticism can filter out biases. Objectivity then is not a goal in itself and by itself, nor achievement of an individual scientist, but nest of autonomous, objective, and physical entities of social world like communities, groups, institutions, and venues that criticizes the researchers' proposed theories. Objectivity derives from the combination of these social and physical forces. According to Popper, objectivity is byproduct of critical intersubjectivity, such that the subject doesn't command on his or her own. That's all. In our next class, we'll continue or we'll start with a new topic, that is reflexivity. We'll discuss what is reflexivity and why is it important. Goldner is known as the father of reflexivity. We'll discuss about reflexivity in our next lecture. Till then, take care.